We are going to take a look at one of my favorite Bible stories. It was definitely one of my favorite when I was little. Joshua and the Battle of Jericho. Does everybody know that story? I think that's one of the first stories that I learned as a little boy. My mom would read Bible stories to me. We had these series of books, and she would read Bible stories out of them, and they had pictures in there, and I was always fascinated by the Battle of Jericho. So if you don't know Joshua and the Battle of Jericho, maybe you will know a little bit more about it when we get done tonight. There we go. So, for a little bit of context, the Israelites have spent 40 years in the wilderness, a little thing called the Exodus. They were led out of Egypt by Moses, the parting of the Red Sea, and then they spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness outside of the Promised Land. And so we're going to start, if you want to open your Bibles, we're going to start in Joshua chapter 1, verse 1. And essentially, the time has come for the Israelites to go to the Promised Land. And Moses has just died because he was not allowed to set foot into the Promised Land. And so Moses has passed away, and the leadership role of the Israelites is passed on to a man named Joshua. And we're going to turn to Joshua 1, verse 1, and we're going to start there. So after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore, arise, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, to the land which I am giving to them, the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you, as I said to Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and to the great sea toward the going down of the sun, shall be your territory. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and of good courage, for to this people you shall divide as an inheritance the land which I swore to your fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So that's how it starts out. It's God's commission to Joshua is basically like the passing of the torch from Moses to Joshua as the leader of God's people. So then, God told them that so basically they're on the east side of the Jordan. They've come to the edge of the Promised Land, and Joshua is given the command by God to lead his people into the Promised Land. And the first thing they have to do is cross the Jordan River, which is a small miracle in itself. The priests walk the Ark of the Covenant into the River Jordan, and the Jordan River parts or stops just like at the Red Sea. And all of the people, which I believe is numbering about 40,000 people at this time, I think, they all cross the Jordan River on dry land, just as they did when crossing the Red Sea. And at this time, the Jordan River was flooded. So it says in the Bible that it was coming over its banks. So it was a small miracle that God did right away, and they crossed the river. If we want to turn to continue the story, we're going to kind of skip a little bit. We're going to go to, we're going to start in chapter 2. So you just got to go to the next chapter. In Joshua chapter 2, verse 1, now Joshua, the son of Nun, sent out 2 men from the acacia grove to spy secretly, saying, go view the land, especially Jericho. So they went and came to the house of a harlot named Rahab, and lodged there. And it was told the king of Jericho, saying, behold, men have come here tonight from the children of Israel to search out the country. So the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, bring out the men who have come to you, who have entered your house, for they have come to search out all the country. Then the woman took the 2 men and hid them. So she said, yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And it happened, as the gate was being shut, when it was dark, that the men went out. Where the men went, I do not know. Pursue them quickly, for you may overtake them. But she had brought them up to the roof and hidden them with the stacks of flax, which she had laid out in order on the roof. Then the men pursued them by the road to the Jordan, to the fords. And as soon as those who pursued them had gone out, they shut the gate. Now before they lay down, she came up to them on the roof and said to the men, I know that the Lord has given you the land, that the terror of you has fallen on us, and all the inhabitants of the land are faint-hearted because of you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the river of the Red Sea for you when you came up out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites who were on the other side of the Jordan, whom you utterly destroyed. And as soon as we heard these things, our hearts melted. Neither did there remain any more courage in anyone because of you, for the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above, and on earth beneath. Now therefore I beg you, swear to me by the Lord, since I have shown you kindness, that you will also show kindness to my father's house, and give me a true token, and spare my father, my mother, my brothers, my sisters, and all they have, and deliver our lives from death. So the men answered her, our lives for yours, if none of you tell this business of ours. And it shall be, when the Lord has given us the land, that we will deal kindly and truly with you. Then she let them down by a rope through the window of her house that was on the city wall. She dwelt on the wall. And she said to them, get to the mountain, lest the pursuers meet you. Hide there 3 days until the pursuers have returned. Afterward, you may go your way. So the men said to her, we will be blameless of this oath of yours, which you have made us swear, unless when we come into the land, you bind this line of scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down. And unless you bring your father, your mother, your brothers, and all your father's household to your own home. So it shall be that whoever goes outside the doors of your house into the street, his blood shall be on his own head, and we will be guiltless. And whoever is with you in the house, his blood shall be on our head if a hand is laid on him. And if you tell this business of ours, then we will be free from your oath, which you made us swear. And she said, according to your words, so be it. And she sent them away, and they departed, and she bound the scarlet cord in the window. They departed and went to the mountain and stayed there 3 days until the pursuers returned. The pursuers sought them all along the way, but did not find them. So the 2 men returned, descended from the mountain, and crossed over. And they came to Joshua the son of Nun and told him all that had befallen him. And they said to Joshua, truly the Lord has delivered all this land into our hands, for indeed all the inhabitants of the country are faint-hearted because of us. So they go scout out, and they meet the woman Rahab. I don't know, I have some artist illustrations of her. And they say that as long as she collects all of her family and stays in her house, She and her family will survive the coming destruction. So we're going to go ahead and skip over the next couple of chapters. They're very excellent. When they cross the river, the miracle that God provides of the parting of the Jordan River and the whole Israelites crossing the Jordan River, which is flooded at the time on dry land, is incredible and is a great story. But it's not really the focus of what we're doing tonight. We're going to go forward, and we're going to go to chapter 6 in Joshua. Joshua 6:1. Now, Jericho was securely shut up because of the children of Israel. None went out, and none came in. And the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have given Jericho into your hands, its king and the mighty men of valor. You shall march around the city, all you men of war. You shall go all around the city once. This you shall do 6 days. And 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram horns before the ark. But the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow the trumpets. It shall come to pass, when they make a long blast with the ram's horns, and when you hear the sound of the trumpet, that all the people shall shout with a great shout. Then the wall of the city will fall down flat, and the people shall go up, every man straight before him." Then Joshua, the son of Nun, called the priests and said to them, "Take up the ark of the covenant, and let 7 priests bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord." And he said to the people, "Proceed and march around the city, and let him who is armed advance before the ark of the Lord." So it was, when Joshua had spoken to the people, that the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the Lord advanced and blew the trumpets. And the ark of the covenant of the Lord followed them. The armed men went before the priests who blew the trumpets, and the rear guard came after the ark, while the priests continued blowing the trumpets. Now Joshua had commanded the people, saying, "You shall not shout or make any noise with your voice, nor shall a word proceed out of your mouth until the day I tell you, shout. Then you shall shout." So he had the ark of the Lord circle the city, going around it once. Then they came into the camp and lodged in the camp. Joshua rose early in the morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord. Then 7 priests bearing 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord went on continually and blew with the trumpets. And the armed men went before them. But the rear guard came after the ark of the Lord, while the priests continued blowing their trumpets. And the 2nd day they marched around the city once and returned to camp. So they did 6 days. But it came to pass on the 7th day that they rose early, about the dawning of the day, and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner. On that day only they marched around the city 7 times. And the 7th time it happened, when the priests blew the trumpet, that Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city. Now the city shall be doomed by the Lord to destruction, it and all who are in it. Only Rahab the harlot shall live, she and all who are with her in the house, because she hid the messengers that we sent. And you by all means abstain from accursed things, lest you become accursed when you take the accursed things, and make the camp of Israel a curse and trouble it. But all the silver and gold and vessels of bronze and iron are consecrated to the Lord. They shall come into the treasury of the Lord." So the people shouted when the priests blew the trumpets. And it happened when the people heard the sound of the trumpet, and the people shouted with a great shout, that the wall fell down flat. Then the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city. And they utterly destroyed all that was in the city, both man and woman, young and old, ox and sheep and donkey, with the edge of the sword. But Joshua had said to the 2 men who had spied out the country, Go into the harlot's house, and from there bring out the woman and all that she has, as you swore to her." And the young men who had been spies went in and brought out Rahab, her father, her mother, her brothers, and all she had. So they brought out all her relatives and left them outside the camp of Israel. Then they burned the city and all that was in it with fire. Only the silver and gold and the vessels of bronze and iron they put into the treasury of the house of the Lord. And Joshua spared Rahab the harlot, her father's household, and all that she had. So she dwells in Israel to this day, because she hid the messengers whom Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. Then Joshua charged them at that time, saying, "Cursed be the man before the Lord who rises up and builds the city Jericho. He shall lay its foundation with his firstborn, and with his youngest he shall set up its gates." So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame spread throughout the country. So it's easy to look at this story, read this story, and, did that really happen? So they just, there was like 40,000 of them, so there was quite a few of them. And they just marched around the city, and marched around the city again, 6 days. They just marched once around the city and then went back to their camp. They didn't even really set up a siege, like ancient cities with their big walls. You surround it so they can't get out, nobody can get in. They didn't even do that. They didn't even set up a siege. They were just camping out, marched around the city, go back to camp. Until the last day, they marched around 7 times. You got to wonder, the people in the city, as they're watching this happen, each day, hey, are they out there again marching around the city? And then that 7th day comes on and they're still marching. Are they go back to their camp yet? No, they're going around again. And then all of a sudden, after they've marched around the entire city 7 times, they blow the trumpets and 40,000 people all cry out loud, shouting at the same time. And you got to imagine there was probably a lot of people on the walls watching them march around the city. They're like, this is silly. What are they going to do? They don't even have siege engines. They haven't even set up a siege lines. They don't even know what they're doing with this warfare. And then the walls just collapse. And the Israelites storm the city and conquer it. And they were all instructed very carefully not to take any plunder, except for the things that were dedicated to the Lord, that they were going to take into the things of value that they would give to the temple treasury. But nobody was to take anything for themselves. So there is a city in Israel today, and it's called Jericho. And that's what it looks like now. And it's not a really big city, but it is a modern city. It's a Palestinian city. So Palestinians live there. No Israelis, Jewish people don't live there. If you see in the distance, you can kind of see, off in the distance, you can see kind of mountains, and like the land rises up. And if you come down where those hills are, and there's kind of a flat spot that goes all the way across the top of that picture, that's where the River Jordan is. It's actually about 6 miles away from Jericho. And on the edge of Jericho, they have this place called a tell. And it is called Tel Es Sultan, or Tel Jericho. A tell is basically like a hill. And it is kind of right on the edge of the modern city. And it was, you can go to the next slide, Mike. And it's basically a big hill. Maybe the next one. Let's go to the next one and then we'll come back. That's what it looks like. And as you can see, there's a lot of holes on it because there's been a lot of excavations on this tell. And it was first identified by Charles Warren in 1868. And he said, that's ancient Jericho. There's been a lot of excavations. The first major archaeological dig to happen at Tel Es Sultan, or Tel Jericho, was by two German archaeologists in 1907. And they dug on this place from 1907 to 1909. Their names were Sellen and Watzinger. And then later, in 1930, a British archaeologist by the name of John Gerstang led an expedition from 1930 to 1936. And then again in 1952 to 1958, another British archaeologist by the name of Kathleen Kenyon also excavated this site. And so a lot of what I'm about to tell you comes from these three sources, of these three different excavations. And we're going to kind of take little pieces and put them all together that each one discovered on their excavation of this site. One thing that each one of these archaeologists discovered is that this location is one of the oldest continuously inhabited settlements in the world. And the tourism industry likes to proclaim that to get people to come visit and tour Jericho. They also, over the course of all these excavations, compiled 29 distinct layers that provide a record of all the people that have lived here, which is a lot to me. So the first thing we're going to talk about, of course, is the most obvious one, and that's the walls. So if you want to go back to the slide before, I should have reversed the order. This is an artist's rendering based on the findings of all these archaeologists of what the city would have looked like on this tell, the ancient city of Jericho. And I always thought, in my mind, whenever I pictured it, I always pictured like one wall, one huge, gigantic wall around the whole city. But in their excavations, and it makes sense when you look at other fortified ancient cities, there's almost always multiple lines of defense. And the inner wall would have been, for the important people. They would have been on the high ground inside the inner wall. And then your poorer people would have been living between the first and second wall, or even outside. But whenever an army approaches a walled city, everybody that lives outside gathers their stuff as much as they can, and they go in the city. And so they estimate there was several thousand people from not only the inhabitants of the city, but also the surrounding area as the Israelites, because they were a large mass of people, and they knew that they were coming a long ways off before they got to Jericho. And they all would have been in the city, hoping that the Israelites would just go past. Let's go to the next slide. So there's another view. This is kind of like an artist rendering, like a digital rendering of the tell, but in modern times. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the tell, the hill around the edge. Let's go back to the slide that shows the two walls. The first one of the city. Go back. That one. Okay, so around the edge of the city, not inside the first wall, but just inside the outer wall, not the inner wall, the outer wall. What they found in their excavations is that the whole hill was surrounded by an earthen rampart or embankment that they had kind of flattened down. Whoever built this ancient city. And around this earthen rampart, this flattened embankment, was a stone retaining wall that formed the base of the outer wall of the city. This retaining wall was 6 feet thick of stone, and it was between 12 and 15 feet high. On top of this retaining wall was a mud brick wall that was also 6 feet thick, built right on top of the stone wall. And this mud brick wall was 20 to 26 feet high. So this outer wall around Jericho that the Israelites would have marched around stood between 32 to 41 feet high. And thanks to Mark, he told me that the peak of our roof here is 24 feet. So we're adding another quite a bit to the walls of Jericho. So if you think you're the Israelites marching around the city, I mean, we're looking at a very tall wall, the base of which is all stone and then mud brick on top of that, upwards of 41 feet high. So which could be quite the intimidating structure to come to. They didn't have catapults. They didn't have battering rams. And we had 40,000 people, and not all of them are soldiers. And the soldiers have maybe shields and spears, maybe a few swords amongst them. But how are we going to take down this city with this huge wall? I mean, you're looking up at them. They're looking down at you. Like, what are you guys doing? You're just marching around? So let's go back to let's go forward in our slides to where we've got the retaining wall. Now, one more, right there. So this is an example of the excavated retaining wall. So this would be the base of the walls of Jericho, would be this stone wall that they estimate, 12 to 15 feet high. So that in itself is a bit imposing to come up on. And then you had a mud brick wall on top of that was another 26 feet high. So if you have an ancient city and an army is approaching, you just assume that they're going to lay a siege. And like I said earlier, they're going to surround your city. They're going to make sure you can't get out. You better have food and water with you because you're not getting out of the city to get food or water. And nobody's going to be allowed to bring you food or water into the city. So, and we find that they did have a natural spring inside the walls of Tel Es-Sultan or Tel Jericho. And it's still there today. And they call it Ain Es-Sultan. And that's the name of the natural spring that's found there. It's still used today, and the modern city still gets water from this natural spring. We know that in Joshua 3:15, it says that the harvest had just been taken in. And so it says that they had a lot of food. Both of the British archaeologists, Gerstang and Kenyon, discovered large jars full of grain that were found inside the ruins of houses and storerooms. And these jars were full of grain, which indicates that if this ancient city was taken in a siege and starved out and surrendered, we wouldn't find any full jars of grain. They'd be empty because they would have eaten it all to survive this siege. And so by finding large jars full of grain, it indicates that the city was taken over a short period of time because they still had lots of food. We can go to the next slide. I think is a picture of here's some of the houses that they excavated, mostly by the British archaeologists. And then the next slide, we have that we uncovered full jars full of grain. So the next thing we have is that during the German excavations in 1907, the first major excavations there, they found evidence of a section of wall that never fell. And we can go to the next slide. One more. I guess I did have those in the wrong. That on the north end, all around this tell, is collapsed walls. You have the mud brick wall, the 26 up to 26 foot wall on top of the stone retaining wall had all collapsed all the way around, except for in one area. There was a small portion of wall that's actually still standing today, over 8 feet of it. All these years later, it's still standing. And what they found is that on this wall, there is evidence that houses were built right up on it, which would lead us to believe that possibly Rahab's house was located right at this one place in the entire area that didn't collapse, and it's still standing today. Also, near this wall is the Judean hills. So like where they were told to flee the city after they met with Rahab, the closest point to the mountain that's mentioned in the Bible is from this point here on the north side of the city. The other thing that we need to find in this place is the Bible says that after the walls fell down and the Israelites took the city, they burned everything. And so we should find evidence of a very large fire. And if you want to go back one slide, Mike. So this is kind of a difficult diagram. This is from the British archaeologist Kathleen Kenyon. And this is like a side cut of the tell, right? And all the layers that they had to excavate through. And if you notice, there is, you see the yellow there, and right below the yellow is like, not the middle block of red, but below that there's a layer of red. That there is what they found on their dig. When they got to that layer, it's over 3 feet of ash. And that ash covers the entire hill. So everywhere you dig on that whole hill, you're going to hit a layer that is on average is 3 feet of ash. And you think about, you have a fire for months in your fireplace. And how much wood would you have to burn to get 3 feet of ash? And yet, on covering basically this entire area, you have a layer of ash. So significant fire happened on this place. So basically, we have the evidence that we have from these archaeologists. We have full grain jars, and those grain jars had scorch marks found on them. So the grain jars experienced a fire. They were exposed to fire at one point. We have the burn layer of ash over the entire hill or tell. We have a portion of walls that didn't collapse. And then, of course, we have the collapsed walls all around the ancient city, which, to me, makes the story like it really happened. And this is where it happened. Now, it may not be the giant city that I pictured when I was a boy listening to this, but you got to think that Joshua's brand new. I mean, he was like assistant to Moses, and it's Moses. I mean, come on, like it's Moses. And you got to take over for Moses? And God gives them, he tells them this is the first place, this is their first challenge in entering the promised land. And so it really makes sense that this maybe wasn't the massive city that I thought of when I first read this story, because they needed some experience, because they're going to go conquer all of the promised land, which is many, many more, much larger, much more fortified cities that they go on to conquer. But God gave them something to, like a challenge at first, to get some experience. And if you want to go to the very last slide, Hebrews 11:30 says that by faith the walls of Jericho fell down after they were encircled for 7 days. And I would go a little step further and say that it was by faith, but it was also by obedience. And we, in our evidence with the full grain jars, we have evidence of the Israelites' obedience to God, because they were instructed not to plunder, not to take anything. And these people just spent 40 years in the desert. You think grain would be valuable to them? And yet they didn't take any of the food, because we still found in 1907, in the 1930s and 1950s, they uncovered lots of full grain jars. There was only one man that disobeyed, and I think he took like a Babylonian garment and was cursed, and that's a whole nother story. So, by faith and obedience, the walls of Jericho fell down. So, that is what I have for you guys tonight, and there you go.